not to sit in court, right? Okay, yes.
Question, as soon as you get to a certain level, you talk about the big competitors coming in. So say you did something like, a certain type of camera, and you didn't even trademark the name. I mean, then they can just come in and say this, totally reproduce your product and just use the name.
What is the alternative to WD-40?
I don't know.
There isn't one. What is the alternative to M&M's?
You could use Skittles.
Well, no, but those aren't chocolate-covered little things.
Yeah.
There are so many products that are unprotected, and it's just it. What's the alternative to
So
Kentucky
that's not
Fried
trade-
Chicken?
But those are trademarked. I can just go.
Those
I
are
could-
trademarks.
I could go and just produce a package of M&Ms. I mean, I could and start selling them to people on the
Okay.
street or something. But
You could,
Right.
and that probably happens. But would you be able to build a business on that? Would you get enough sales of your M&Ms? It says Pilgrim on your shirt.
Right.
Pilgrim's M&Ms.
Right.
Come buy M&Ms from me and you'll be happier. And they'll say, well, no, I buy M&Ms from Mars Candy and I'm happy. How do you make me happy?
Right, for a
by
small-
by a lower price, by going to a lower price.
Right. But for a small upstart competitor, that's true. But for a larger competitor like Walmart or something like that, coming into your market, we're the small competitor, and they'll say, well, we'll just totally roll you over. Not only are we selling your product, we're taking your name, so you have absolutely no chance. We're making it cheaper. We have your trademark name. We have everything that you have, basically.
Well, okay, you do have, there is a point
You
where
have a
that
few
stops.
customers, right? Yeah.
First off, remember nobody knows who you are anyway because you're so small.
Right.
So why they would take your name, I don't know. But go with that. They'd be selling to customers that aren't yours. On the reverse of the Rolex thing, they'd be selling to everybody at a low price. Okay. So are there examples where there's a name where they sell very high class stuff and the same name sells very low class stuff? Are there examples of that? Yes. Oh yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
Pierre Cardin. He's got, extremely couture, extreme expense. Well, I'm going back a ways. I don't know if he's even alive anymore. And then he's got the stuff in Kmart. There's all sorts of examples of that. So that happens too, as well. Keep that in mind as we go through there. Keep probing that because I'm learning right now 2 of your questions. Okay. Other questions on this?
I was going to make a response to what you said, and I see what you're saying. One
Yeah.
thing I was going to say though is that I could also see if a big company were for some reason to take your name and your product, I could see that actually boosting your sales because then that would, like you said, would enter a whole new market. Enter into a whole new market of people, and they would start buying both, Kmart's, version of your product and your version of your product.
Well, let's go along with that. Let's take that. And what's the most competitive industry in the world?
Competitive?
Industry. Big. Computer industry. Yeah, computer industry. Okay. Up until the 1980s, the most fearsome company in the computer industry was IBM. The government was looking like breaking them up because they're just so powerful. Before some kid from Seattle that was living in Phoenix at the time decided to take them down. A guy by the name of Bill Gates. And a couple of kids working in a garage in Cupertino came up with this idea of a personal computer. Actually, a lot of people at the time were doing it, but these particular kids, in 1976, started a company called Apple. Okay? And 1976. Now, 1976, it was only like 6 or 7 years earlier that a fellow had written a best-selling book that said, by the year 1990, way back in the future, this book was written like 1968, 69, so like by 1990, way into the future, there'd be 5 computers on planet Earth. Okay? There'd be 3 in the United States, 1 in Germany, and 1 in Japan, or Russia and Japan, somewhere. I don't know where. And that would handle all computing requirements for planet Earth, all into the future. And it was IBM, and what was the other company? Cray. And what were these massive mainframes? Okay, Cray was the other computer company out there. Well, that's what everybody believed. It was just getting bigger and more centralized. And so these 2 kids said, no. Everybody's going to want their own computer. Okay, now that's nuts. So these 2 kids, crazy kids, working on the computer, come up with this idea for something called an Apple computer. And there was K-Pro, and there was Tandy, and there was all Radio Shack, there was all these other people that said it too, but these guys were particularly good at it. So they introduced the personal computer in 1976. And in what year did IBM finally come out with their version of the PC? What year was that?
84.
Yeah. Supposed to be 82, they were late as like 83. So 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82. In the most competitive industry in the world, it took the conservator, the biggest, baddest conservator in the world, 6 or 7 years to steal the idea. Did Jobs and Wozniak make any money the first 6 or 7 years? Yeah, of course they did. Business Week magazine had to come up with the term centimillionaire because these two kids had got over $100 million each out of the IPO when that happened. So that's kind of started the second California gold rush, and all these people on the East Coast said, those kids are making that kind of money, we better rethink everything we're doing here. And that started that whole kind of, as I said, the second California gold rush there. So yeah, they made plenty of money, and then IBM does come in with their version of the personal computer in '84 or whatever. And of course, Apple Computer went out of business in 1984 and has not been heard from since, correct? They were gone in 1984, correct? Because in the United States, when somebody steals your idea, you go out of business, therefore you must protect it, correct? What? Isn't that what you hear when you go to school in America, that you have to protect your ideas so they don't get stolen from you? Is that not what you learn? Have you rejected what you learned in school? Yes, you have. Okay, good. So it's not true. You can have your ideas stolen from you from the most fearsome companies in the world, and it just doesn't matter. Why? What did Apple do when their idea was stolen from them?
They kind of changed their image.
They redesigned their product.
They stylized their design.
Yeah. Well, they actually screwed it up because they had the Apple II, Apple I, Apple II ES, Apple and then IBM came and said, that's pretty good, we're going to do the exact same thing, and came in and stole their idea. So they redesigned and came up with something called the Lisa. Anybody remember the Lisa? $35,000 and it didn't work? I mean, it was just terrible. But it was halfway between the Apple II ES and the Macintosh. Okay? So then the Macintosh was inspired by, back at that time in the early 80s, the Cuisinart. He said, I want it to look like a Cuisinart because the Cuisinart's really cool. So that was, we got his inspiration for that. So the Macintosh was right at $2,500 or $3,000 for the Macintosh. Redesign. So constantly redesigning. Now, when they got up to fantastic sales on those, they brought in a guy from PepsiCo to run it as a conservator company, no longer competing on design. And Scully from PepsiCo then started running it into the ground. Jobs was thrown out of Apple, wandered disconsolate around Europe, down to his last billion. Poor guy. And then as it went deeper and deeper in trouble, he came back and offered to work for $1 a year. And they brought him back. So, you remember the big colorful iMacs, when he introduced those? That started Macintosh back? What's the design that caused people? Plastic, right? I was talking to some teacher down in California, and I was talking to some Apple engineers. They said, when he came, there was nothing technologically worth a damn inside Apple. The only thing they had was the laptops that they just brought out were the best technologically going. So the iMac was a laptop motherboard with a big piece of plastic on it and a CRT hooked up to it. That's what they started with. He said the other thing is, if you go look at those old iMacs, I still have it, I still use it. What's that? How many years old is that now? Is that 1990 or something?
Clamshells?
No, not the clamshells. No, I'm talking about the big iMacs that were raspberry, blueberry, and all that, and carrot and all that kind of stuff.
98 or something?
Yeah,
Was it?
97.
97?
Yeah, whatever that was. That's only 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, if you go look at those now, they're re-PC, you can get them for $25 or whatever. Yeah, don't look at the front. Go around to the back. Because that's what everybody look at. They go around the back and they look, what is the shape there? This is on purpose. They did it. When he came back, the shape is a pregnant woman. That's exactly what it is. And that is, he brought in the designers and said, we're going to do this and we're rebirth here. We're going to make it the shape of, perfectly the shape of a pregnant woman. And so remember look at those, you came around the back and you looked at it, you didn't know what was happening to you. Those designers knew what they were doing. But what you're looking at, you're saying, oh, that's attractive, that's cool, that's rebirth. It was a big psychological thing going on there too. So anyway, and then E-machines and everybody else started coming up with trying to knock it off, but never did quite right because they didn't get what they were doing at Apple. So anyway, do you think Apple fears IBM or anybody else? No. As soon as your idea is stolen from you, you redesign.